to the Veloce Podcast.
Hello.
So we're on episode 37.
We are.
And we thought we'd do an F1 special after yesterday's race at Abu Dhabi. We thought we can't not talk about this.
Some of you probably think all of them are F1 specials, but
Yeah.
this is an F1 special, this one.
Yeah, this one solely is going to be about motorsport. So we're not going to feature the cars this time, the driving techniques and all that kind of stuff. Solely about F1 season in general, and also a little bit about next year as well. Well, first of all then, what did you think of yesterday's race?
Well, but overall, it was a very boring race, wasn't it? But with the most
Until the last lap.
astonishing last lap.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I thought it was a bit clumsy the way it finished, to be honest. I think.
But what about the start?
Yeah,
because obviously it was controversial at the start as well as the end.
It was. I mean, I think Lewis had the faster car all weekend, really. I know Max was on pole.
Yeah.
But once Lewis had got it off the line and got it through the first corner, I think that was pretty much it. Now, obviously, then Max fired it down the inside, didn't it? Whatever it was, turn 5, I think it was.
Yeah.
Now, for me, this is one of the things we've talked about over the year, really, is about the track limits and putting gravel there, which is what Carlos Sainz said about Brazil.
Yeah.
I think if there'd been gravel or a wall there, Lewis wouldn't have gone off.
Yeah.
He'd have probably braked harder and dropped in behind him and done an undercut through the corner. But of course, I think it was always in his mind, I'll just go straight on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And drop back on. And of course, then we said to ourselves, you have to give that back now.
Yeah, as did Martin Brundle, Damon Hill, Jenson Button. There was quite a few racing drivers that also thought the same, were quite shocked by the
because I couldn't see anything wrong. Yes, it was an aggressive move, but there was nothing wrong with it. He was cleanly alongside. He didn't force Hamilton off. Hamilton could have stayed on the road.
Yeah, and one thing I would say, Martin Brundle is very fair. So like the previous race at Qatar, Brundle was very hard on Max and Max's behaviour as the race went on and how aggressive he was getting. So he was quite hard on him. Whereas this race, at the start, he said, well, I don't see what Max has done wrong. Yes, it was aggressive, but the door was wide open. He's kept it within the lines. Lewis could have yielded. He didn't. And he's gained a massive advantage by cutting across. And that's kind of how I felt, really.
Yeah, I mean, I actually don't think it would have made much difference if he'd given the place back, to be honest.
No, I don't in that sense. But one thing I would say, it shows inconsistencies with the FIA's decisions, for me.
Totally.
You know, is we all thought that, yet that didn't happen. But then on another race, that might have happened where the place had been given back. And that's the bit for me that we'll talk about later a bit more. But yeah, it's just hard to get your head around, and it's making it more controversial for everybody, I think, because it's not clear cut.
No, it isn't.
Ultimately.
And then of course the race itself, Max didn't have an answer. Lewis was just stroking it and driving it away into the distance, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And it was funny, with about 10 laps to go, they went to Christian Horner on the pit wall, and he said, we need a miracle, really.
Yeah,
Next thing you know, there's a Williams backed into the wall.
Yeah, he said something about the race gods or something, didn't he?
Yeah.
And I think, I wouldn't say Max is my favourite driver, but for this year, I was rooting for Max, not because I'm anti-Lewis at all.
No.
It's just always nice to see a really tight rivalry. And I felt like Max was really digging deep with that car towards the end of the season, especially.
And I think Jackie Stewart said, didn't you, I think F1 needed a change.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why this year has been so brilliant, isn't it? Because it was so
astonishing,
ultimately.
But the way it finished, I thought, was a bit clumsy, to be honest. I mean, overall, if you look at it, all the scenario, there's no way they wanted to finish under a safety car. So they needed to do another racing lap somehow.
Yes.
But of course, as soon as the safety car came out, Mercedes were screwed because they couldn't pit Hamilton, because if they pit Lewis, but also if they pitted him, they're now behind Max. And they're behind Perez. Yeah. So now they're a bit knackered, aren't they? Because what do they do? Yeah. So if it goes back to green, okay, there's a chance he might go back past because he's now on fresher tyres. But if it finishes under safety car, then he's behind Max. Yeah. So they had to stay out. But of course, Max pitted. They didn't do anything wrong.
No, Red Bull and Max in this situation didn't do anything wrong at all. They were just very lucky that it timed like it did.
Now, obviously, we watched IndyCar all the time, and what they would have done in America, without doubt, is they would have stopped it. They red flagged it, thinking, right, we'll just have a 3-lap sprint race. Yeah. That's what they would have done in America. So they'd have been both on soft tyres. Best man would have won, which probably would have been Lewis.
Yes,
to be fair,
in that situation.
Given that he was, he got it in the bag, really.
Yeah.
But they at least would have then have had 2 or 3 laps to actually duke it out fair's fair.
Yeah.
So it was a bit clumsy, and the trouble with it is it kind of casts a bit of a shadow over it all.
Yeah.
Which is a bit unfair on Max, I think, really.
But interestingly, so I asked for lots of people's opinions after this, and even a lot of people in the Lewis camp and Mercedes camp didn't want to take it away from Max, because I think they understood in this situation it wasn't really Red Bull's fault or Max's fault. So it wasn't necessarily the right thing to do is switch it so Lewis had won the championship under those circumstances. I think it more reflects on the FIA, how they're dealing with these situations and how grey some of the rules are. I mean, we saw that in Qatar, didn't we? With Max saying about Lewis is more than 10 car lengths behind, and obviously everybody thought, well, that's not right, you can't do that. And then it turns out on a restart you can, but not on a natural start. You think all those things which just seem unnecessary and just so confusing, and that side of it ruins it for me. I don't like the penalties, I don't like all of that. I want it to be how it used to be, in that sense, clear cut, straightforward.
For me, I mean, it's summed the year up, then it all came out of the last lap of the season, but for me, it's not Max Verstappen didn't win the World Championship in Abu Dhabi. He won it over 22 races, didn't
Absolutely.
he? And it was so close for them to go into the last round on the same points. Is just unheard of.
As I've mentioned before, so the last time that happened was 40 years ago. It was the last time two drivers went on equal points to the final round. So it shows how rare that is. So you're absolutely right. It doesn't come down to one race. And actually here I was going through all of the races one by one, all the highlights. And one thing it highlights most of all is how many moves Max has done to get a position back. Now, really, most of them have been legit, honestly. It's only really the ones that have been controversial was Brazil and then Qatar. Ultimately.
Yeah, and Monza, I suppose.
But they both went out.
Blame for Monza, but they both went off with that.
So that still doesn't count as in like.
No.
Yeah.
No. It's been nip and tuck, because the one that sticks in kind of, and Adrian Newey said the one that I didn't like was Cops. Because I thought that was 100% Hamilton's fault.
Me too. I mean, as you know, I've had a massive accident at Cops, and I was the person on the inside, and had a very, very big shunt there, and it's incredibly fast, and I think with Lewis, he should have yielded in that situation.
He hadn't got the corner.
He hadn't got the corner, and that's probably the only time where he's been the one who's probably been in the wrong.
Yeah, I would say it probably
the rest
is.
have probably been more Max.
Yeah. He's played more games. He's played more games, but then that's the job.
Yeah, absolutely. It's part of the even whether it's him or Mercedes. I found Mercedes this year, up to now, they've always seemed so together. Toto Wolff has always seemed like the best boss you could have. And this year, as the season went on, you just started to see cracks.
Yeah, absolutely. He wasn't very gracious at the weekend, was he?
Well, no, I didn't realise. So obviously, straight away after the race, they had a barrister there. They had it out with the FIA. So there were two things they contested, wasn't there? What was it? The one was the safety car procedure.
Yeah, and the other was Max overtook Lewis under safety car.
Which actually didn't happen.
No, because all he did was draw alongside.
Yeah, and
which happens every time there's a safety car.
And then tucked in behind.
Yeah.
So they both got thrown out. Christian Horner went at the end to shake Toto's hand, and Toto wouldn't even come out of the garage. So I was a bit surprised by that. I know it's unbelievably disappointing. And of course I had it so close. But it's racing at the same time. Again, when I go through everything over the year, there have been so many times where, Max and Red Bull have been unlucky. I mean, look at the time when Bottas took both Red Bulls out. There have been times where it's been really unfortunate and Merck have been lucky. And it's just, that's part of the game, and it can be really bitter pill to swallow, but you have to kind of accept the situation. And I'm surprised they haven't, because even if you could argue about the procedure of safety car, it still wasn't Red Bull's fault or Max's fault. And even if they'd let all the other cars overtake and get back into order,
the result would have been the same.
It still wouldn't have made any difference to them two, if you know what I mean.
I suppose the only weird thing they could have done is brought the safety car in and let them go over the line, if you see what I mean. So Lewis would have won it then. But I
just think, though, they didn't, the way the season's been, I think they didn't want to just red flag it and that's it. And they didn't want to finish it under safety car. I think they wanted it to go down to the wire. And let's face it, it did make it really exciting, what was actually going to be a boring race. But I appreciate how distressing that is for Mercedes to lose it right at the end on the last lap.
Oh, you can completely get it, but
yeah,
they've got to be the bigger person and let it go. They've had a good run,
absolutely,
and the constructors champions.
Yeah, and
you start to look. It looks like a bit sour grapes when you start doing what they're doing. But anyway, that's by the by. It has been one of the best years in F1. Hasn't
it's funny enough. I was just going to say, what are your thoughts of the year in general?
Well, I look back across the year and the number of races where you'd got Lewis and Max, no more than a couple of seconds apart, battering round for lap after lap. It was just astonishing. If you think, there was so many races like that, and at the same time there'd be 30 seconds up the road from anybody else. It's been an unbelievable year. You didn't know who was going to win the race every time you went to a race.
Yeah.
Which is all you ever want it to be, really.
Yeah, I think for me, like I said before, 40 years since this was the last happened where it came down to the final round on equal points. I think that highlights how special this season has actually been. And I liked that the start of the year, it looked like Red Bull had the advantage, and then Mercedes managed to turn it around. And especially really from Brazil onwards, it was almost felt like they were untouchable. At the end, weren't they? Yeah. Really. So I felt like they deserved the constructors because they did manage to turn it around. So they did have the better car. However, I think either driver would deserve the championship, and I think, like you rightly said, Max didn't win it just at Abu Dhabi.
No.
Ultimately, it's the whole season going through it. But no, it's just fascinating all along. Even, the actual calendar was changing constantly. If you think because of the pandemic, when have we had that before?
Well, yeah, exactly.
You don't even know where they're going next. No, they don't know where they're going next. And because of that, we went to circuits we haven't been to before, but also got to go back to circuits we haven't been to for a while because of the pandemic. So I just felt like it was really mixed up this year in a good way. Exciting, massive following, and it was nice to see Ferrari and McLaren get a bit more in the mix as well. Them get a bit closer.
Yeah, didn't they? Yeah.
Absolutely. So, and it was nice to see some actual racing, because I think in Formula One for a while we haven't had it. And one thing I would say about Lewis, and I'm sure lots of people disagree with me here, but he looked a bit out of practice wheel to wheel.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
When it came down to the really hard fight, Verstappen just seemed to have that edge a little bit. Like, for example, why did he yesterday at the start leave the door wide open, and then why did he on the safety car do the same thing and leave the door wide open? And it's just kind of there's been a few times
he knows
this
Max
year,
is coming, doesn't he?
Just a few times this year where he just seems to have been, I wouldn't say caught napping, that's probably unfair, but just hasn't seemed to have been how he used to be with his aggressive driving. And I don't know if that's because, not that he's had it easy, but they've had such a dominant car that he hasn't had to do so much wheel-to-wheel, really aggressive driving. So, it just stood out to me, for sure. And you can see that over the season when you look at the results, the amount of times Max, like the sprint race at Silverstone, Max got him right at the start into the corner. There's been a lot of that, where Max has jumped on him immediately.
So what's been your standout race then? What was the one you...
For excitement, Qatar. It wasn't the result I wanted. It was
pretty nuts, Qatar.
But it was just unbelievable. Edge of the seat all the way to the end, stressful. So for me, that stood out. But then away from that was probably Monza, because of course with what happened with Max and Lewis, it left the door open to other drivers, which was lovely to see. Actually, there's a few, because then I think about Norris, who almost won
Russia.
Where was he? Russia, that's it. He almost won that, and then 5 laps to go, it starts to rain.
And Ocon it.
So we start thinking of more and more and more. But no, I'll go with Qatar, probably, not because I loved the result, but I just thought it was just a completely mad, intense race. Red flag after red flag. Just haven't seen a race like that for a while. So that's probably the standout. For a result, probably Monza. It was nice. Daniel's had a really hard year this year at McLaren. And against Norris especially, Norris has really been on form, showing how strong he is. So it was really nice to see Daniel win that race, and it also be a 1-2 for McLaren. So I think for me, yeah, it'd be Monza. But what about yourself?
Well, my favourite race of the year quite often, because I just think the track is a mega, is Azerbaijan, Baku.
Oh yeah.
And I don't think it was a fairly straightforward race. Max had got it in the bag, but I love Baku when they got round the castle and everything else. And then it's got Silverstone. You know, it's a mega place. And of course there was the 4-lap sprint at the end. And I said when they set off, I think at the time when it set off again, Alonso was 10th, and I said this is perfect for Fernando Alonso, and he finished like 4th or something.
Absolutely.
Seb finished 2nd, didn't he?
Oh, he did, yeah.
He finished 2nd or 3rd, I can't remember, but he was well up there.
But I think in the end his fuel
that was Hungary.
requirements.
That was Hungary.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know there was one of them where he lost the position.
Yeah, so Azerbaijan for me, just because I think it's just a mega place.
Yeah, it'd be a great place to go and watch from.
It would.
It looks beautiful where it is
it does.
positioned.
It looks
I think it'd be a great, absolutely great place.
Yeah.
So, so if we talk a little bit about teams and drivers then over here, because we thought we'd do a bit of a roundup, a review of kind of the year in general. So yeah, starting with Haas then.
Yeah, so I've tried to do it sort of from the back forward. So starting with Haas, I mean, the thing for me with Haas, two things really. One is, it was a terrible car. It looked like a nasty piece of work, the car. The number of times they'd get mid-corner and get a snap and they'd go off the road.
Yeah.
So to be... Because the thing was, what I've put is that it's so hard to say how good Mick Schumacher is because he's got such a weak teammate.
Yeah.
But the car's so hard to drive that perhaps it's just too much for Mazepin. I don't really know.
Yeah.
And Mick might be making it walk on water. We just don't know until he goes to a different team or gets a different teammate. We won't really know. But I mean, the car wasn't a great.
I'm surprised by Haas. I know they don't have the funding as some of the teams, but what I am surprised by is why you would even bother having the car out, spending that kind of money when you know you haven't developed the car at all. And yeah, I think in fairness to both drivers, that car, just how many times on board, I mean, Martin Brundle says so many times it just looks awful to drive.
It just whipped round on the mid-corner and things.
Exactly, and there's nothing you could do. I mean, that is credit to Mick, though, that time he got it into Q2.
Yeah.
You know, very impressive. Like you say, it's really hard to tell, really, the ability of both of them. Yes, we've seen them in Formula 2 and things, but at this stage for Formula 1, it's really hard to gauge it. Like Mazepin, I was like a lot of people where I wasn't keen on him coming into Formula 1. I thought it was all very controversial. Then I saw, what race was it? And he was really emotional after qualifying because he didn't quite string the lap together. And he was really trying to hold back his emotion and tears. And what it did change for me is it does mean a lot to him, because there has been, we've seen it in the sport a lot, where there's wealthy parents that push their kids up through the ranks and as far as they can, but the kids don't necessarily want to do it. And it really showed to me that it means a lot to him. So,
yeah, but for me, he shouldn't be there. He's not good enough. I mean, at times he was over a second off Mick.
Yeah,
you know,
which is
that's not acceptable, really.
No, not at Formula 1 level. It just isn't.
I mean, we'll come to the Ferrari drivers in a minute. That's how it should be. But you know, there was a chasm between them, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, we've just seen it in Formula 2. Piastri's just won the championship. So, like you said, he's done a Leclerc. So every category's been in the last 3 years. It's been his first year and he's won the title. So he's gone into Formula 2 first year, won the title, yet he's got no seat in Formula 1.
He says he's going to be the best in the world at sitting on the sofa next year, is what he said.
It's just awful.
Crazy.
Like, you think the person that wins in their first year in Formula 2 absolutely deserves a seat in Formula 1, and I just think we need to stop that. So the person going into Formula 1 instead from Formula 2, what is it, their third year?
Yeah, Granny Zhao,
Yeah, third year, and they've still not won the title, yet they're going into Formula 1, and that's when you start to resent it a little bit. You know, that's not right.
No.
However, Piastri looks like he will get a drive in 2023,
with Alpine. One of the Alpine drivers will have to make way, I think.
Yeah, so fingers crossed he will get his shot. But yeah, it's just a shame it's worked out like that. Yeah, so Haas next year, of course, it could be a real game changer. They've been developing their car, haven't they?
Yeah.
Focusing solely on 2022.
See.
So we'll see. It could be a complete game changer for them.
So on to Alpha then. So again, a difficult one really, because you've got Kimi at the far end of his career.
Yeah.
Who had a solid enough year, but he made quite a few mistakes, I think, really. Like he dropped it in the weekend, didn't he?
Yeah.
Some silly little mistakes that make you think, has he mentally kind of switched off a little bit. And that then makes it hard for me to measure Giovinazzi, because Giovinazzi's done some amazing stuff this year.
Yeah.
But he has been neck and neck with Kimi mostly.
Yeah.
I think he's mostly been quicker, but it's not been night and day.
Yeah.
Where I think really, if you're a good young driver, you should be dominating somebody like Kimi. I think at that point.
At this point, yeah, I think Kimi admitted it himself that he's really looking forward to retiring. He loves driving a Formula 1 car, but everything else he hates about the sports. And I think, so because of that, his heart's not really in it. We know he's a world-class driver and one of the fastest drivers in the world, but I don't think his heart's really in it anymore, hence why he's retired. So you're right. I think with Giovinazzi, I really like him, and he's done better than I thought he would do in many respects. He's grown, he's got fast, he carries himself well.
But of course, now they've got rid of both of theirs because they're having Valtteri and they're having Guanyu Zhou.
Yeah.
So it's all changed. I think Guanyu Zhou will struggle with Bottas.
Oh, for sure. Because if you actually look at Bottas over the years, I know a lot of people have been critical, but actually he has a lot of the time, not every time, but a lot of the time, he has been pretty much as quick as Lewis.
Totally.
Over a lap. And sometimes quite often.
Who is one of the greatest racing drivers of all time.
Absolutely. I think he just hasn't, got the team around him. Mentally, he has really struggled with it, being against one of the best drivers in the world of all time, like you say. So I think seeing him in a different team, he'll be even stronger. So I think that's going to be a handful.
So that'd be interesting to see. So on to Williams then. So Williams have had a bit of an up and down year because the car clearly works quite well in some circumstances, because some of the stuff George has done with it, especially in the wet, I mean, he stuck it, what did he put it, third on the grid in Russia?
Yeah.
He put it on the front row at Spa.
Absolutely. Spa, he actually came second, because if you remember, they didn't actually race.
They didn't race,
It was an 8-minute race.
Yeah, so he got
under safety car. So he actually came second, which is mega.
He got a part for that. I mean, he's known as Mr. Saturday.
Yeah.
And of course, Mark Webber used to do this a little bit, because Mark Webber was good on Saturdays.
Yeah. And
then spend the entire race Sunday just gradually falling backwards. So hopefully, if Mercedes don't smother him and stitch him up next year and hold him back and all the things that I think that they may well be doing, who knows? Yeah. Then Lewis could have his hands full with him.
Oh, absolutely.
Because he is brilliant.
In pace for sure. Well, if you think when he went and did that race for Mercedes when Lewis had COVID, how quickly Lewis came back, even before he recovered from COVID properly, because he knows how quick Russell is, and Russell over a lap is unbelievable.
And he's got a point to prove as well.
And he's hungry, really, really hungry. But like you say, Mercedes are naturally geared and focused around Lewis. All they've won together. So that's going to be interesting to see the dynamic next year for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And with Latifi, he's much closer to George than Mazepin is to Schumacher.
Yeah.
But I still don't think he's quite F1 material.
Yeah, I think he's an incredibly good driver. He's just not one of the best in the world.
No, he's not.
He's got stronger. He's definitely got stronger. He's obviously worked incredibly hard at it. He's got much stronger, much closer to George than at the start of the season. But like you say, it's not to be harsh. It's just, any sport, the top of the game has to be the cream of the crop, the best in the world. And I'm not quite sure if he's that. No. Really, but he has worked incredibly hard. So Williams next year again, be interesting to see, won't it?
Well, they're used to operating with a small budget, and they've all got big budget caps now. So
so it might work really well for them.
Yeah, it might do. They perhaps haven't got the people, but we'll see.
Yeah.
So Aston. So this is one that interests me, because I think Aston are gonna, going forwards, the Lawrence Stroll is firing money through the door. Yeah. So it could be quite interesting, because I think that they will probably recruit somebody like Piastri.
Yeah.
You can see Aston thinking, right, we need the best.
Yeah.
So and they've got the budget to do it. The car's been a bit up and down this year.
It has. There's been moments of flashes of fast, and then it seems to vanish again.
Yeah. And of course you've got Seb driving there, Vettel, who everybody loves Sebastian.
And he is a world-class driver, for sure.
And he's as fast as anybody, really.
Yeah.
And Stroll, to be fair, has matched him most of the time.
Yeah.
They're pretty close.
Yeah.
I don't think Stroll's got much flair. He hasn't got the flair that Seb's got, where, like Azerbaijan, where Seb will see an opportunity and he'll seize it.
Yeah.
I don't know whether Stroll's got that. I often get the impression with Lance that he's not really that bothered. You hear him in the press conferences, and he's a bit flat and a bit like, he talks about it being a job and it's his work, and you think,
Yeah, I think
that's
like,
not
that's
really.
what I mean.
It's not his
though,
passion.
With some people, when they have such wealthy parents, they get pushed and channeled into something and up the ranks. They've got the money to do it, but whether it's ever really a passion, you could really enjoy something.
Yeah.
But passion is different.
And
it's
I think
your world, it's your life.
Yes,
you
and
know?
I think he's better than Latifi, and he's better than Mazepin.
Yeah, I agree.
I think he's a good driver.
Yeah.
Stroll. But
and Seb, because Seb's unbelievable, really. I know he didn't do well at Ferrari, but that's all in the head. You know, we've seen it with Valtteri. Some of these drivers are unbelievably fast, but if their head drops, their game drops. And I think really with Seb, that's what happened at Ferrari. He couldn't deal with this young gun coming in, getting this long-term contract, and his head dropped, and he sort of, he needed to leave, which he did, and he's been driving much better ever since. Yeah,
so that's good. So Alpine, again, their car, sometimes their car was brilliant, and other times it didn't work at all.
Yeah, it's been a really odd year
which
for them.
really annoyed Fernando, didn't it? You could see that.
Because he even when it was fast, he wasn't that happy because he wanted to make sure the team understood why it was fast, and I don't think they did. I don't think they understood why it was so fast one weekend, and then can't get out of Q3.
Out of Q1, yeah, exactly, yeah. That's right.
Sorry, Q1, sorry. And the next race, which is mad,
frustrating.
Really. How can it fluctuate to that degree? But it has done.
Yeah.
I mean, it was great that Ocon won a race this year. Which has been brilliant for them, and Alonso got on the podium. That's also been brilliant. I think as a team they work very well. I think they've got a good relationship. Ocon and Alonso, they're very different stages of their career, so I think Alonso is probably much easier to work with as a teammate now than he would have been as a young man. So I get the impression they could be very strong next year.
Yes, and they've got the resources and they can afford to hire the people.
Absolutely.
I mean, Alonso, once he found his feet, was back on form. He's never been the fastest over a lap.
No.
He's in the races. He's just relentless. And I think that's probably what Ocon's fine, because Ocon has matched him pace for pace.
Yeah.
Quite often been quicker, but come the race, I mean, the race that Ocon won, he basically won because of Fernando.
Yeah.
Because Lewis Hamilton carved his way through the field.
And Fernando did everything
until he got as far as Fernando Alonso.
Because he did everything he could to make sure.
Was it 11 laps or something it took him to get past?
Yeah, absolutely. But that's that racecraft. But no, Alonso will say himself, for him, and I've who did I take out? The McLaren guy, Martin Whitmarsh.
Martin Whitmarsh, yeah.
And I asked him, so he used to be the boss of McLaren, and I asked him who's the best driver you've ever worked with, and I thought he'd say Lewis. And he said Fernando Alonso, and I said why? And he said because he's 99% in all areas, whereas most drivers will have 100% here, but they're massively not in other areas. He is such an all-round driver, and he's just ruthless as a competitor, and you can see that, can't you? The sprint races suited him down to the ground, didn't they? On cold tyres, where you have to have that real natural feel.
Yeah, cold tyres round the outside.
Just, just
that's Fernando Alonso.
So much faster than the others.
And that's what people like Senna would do.
Yeah, exactly. Very, very special. So excited to see next year. I'd love to see him up there. Obviously, he's probably not going to have much longer in Formula One.
No, I was imagining whether they'll make way for him for Piastri. I don't know.
Yeah, and I kind of agree. I mean, I'm a massive Alonso fan, but I do agree with what people say that you've got to make room for these young guns coming in. The only thing that changes my mind on that is then when you have other young guns coming in with loads of money that aren't as good.
Shouldn't be there either.
At least Alonso is a world-class driver who does deserve to be there.
Yeah.
We'll see.
So the resurgence of McLaren continue. McLaren have had a good year. Again, a little bit up and down with their car.
Yeah,
but overall been strong.
The year was stronger, wasn't it? Really.
Yeah. And Lando just brilliant. I mean, he is one of the rich kids that's absolutely got the ability.
Oh, absolutely. And wants it and loves it. He works unbelievably hard all of the time.
And Ricciardo really has had no answer to him.
No, he suddenly started to show a bit more form, kind of mid-season, didn't he? Or just past mid-season. And then it seemed to drop away again.
Yeah, I mean, it's ironic that he won the race, because he won Monza. I mean, Monza's the easiest track to go to. So he got about 4 corners.
But I think Norris found that hard to swallow. Obviously, he was super happy for the team. But he found that hard to swallow, especially when Norris was so close to winning a race himself, and that all going horribly wrong. And he admits, that was pretty much his fault. He overruled the team really on that front with the tyre change, and he paid the price. And it was a gamble that went the wrong way. But no, they both work incredibly hard. They're both very quick. It's just Daniel hasn't found that magic touch with the car yet. He's got a lot better with it, and he's much closer to Norris, but it's still up and down.
It is,
still up and down. So I'm hoping next year he has a better year. But McLaren seems to be pushing forwards. I think Zach Brown's a great boss. And he knows exactly what he needs to do and gets the right people in. So I think, I think they'll be really strong next year.
Yeah. And of course, their closest rival has been Ferrari, which, you know, they're probably our two favourite drivers in F1 have both drive for Ferrari, which is Leclerc and Sainz.
Yeah.
And if you want to see how fast the Ferrari goes, you know, there's normally like 1,000th.
Oh, yeah. Honestly. And if anything, though, Sainz has, I've said this before, but blown me away completely.
Well, mostly he's been quicker, hasn't he? I think he has...
I thought it was going to be a risk, him going up against Leclerc, because Leclerc has got a CV history like Lewis. And I thought, you know what, this is going to be hard for Sainz. He's really good, but, you know, is he one of the greats? And you know what? I think he's probably the most underrated driver in Formula One.
Very fast, adaptable.
Great in races, great racecraft, comes across really well, great car control, and you think, actually, this guy is the real deal.
He's the real deal.
And he really is.
And I think Ferrari, you know, I mean, if they ever get into a title battle, it could all come unzipped very quickly. But I think Carlos has got the edge with speed. Charles has probably got the edge in the race, because he's like Fernando. He's like relentless in the races, isn't he?
Charles has made a lot of mistakes.
He has, yeah.
So when
he's more emotional, I think.
When I was looking through this, Sainz has been on the podium and higher scoring than Leclerc over the year quite consistently. Yeah. So I know exactly what you mean, but Charles has made much more emotional, costly mistakes. Yeah. That's the thing that he needs to iron out.
There could be a bomb waiting to go off at Ferrari, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
So Mercedes then, I think overall the fastest car, though I think sometimes the Red Bull wasn't. I think Lewis has been brilliant all year. He's not been particularly graceful in defeats.
Yeah.
He's not taken some of his... I mean, Azerbaijan was a classic where he made his own mistake when he went off after the restart and just shot down the escape road. And they wouldn't speak. Yeah. And then, okay, I get the emotions of it and everything else, but sometimes when he's won, everything's great, like Silverstone. If he's finishing second, he's not very gracious in defeat, where Max has handled that a bit better, I think.
Yeah, I think he's all right once he's cooled down. Like you say, a lot of it is the emotion, isn't it? How much it means, how hard he works, and he's obviously knows what he's capable of, and I suppose there's that frustration there as well, isn't there, when you make a mistake like that, you know, for you and the team. I think Mercedes overall, it was astonishing how they were a bit on the back foot, then somehow managed to turn it around the second half of the season. So they absolutely,
which is impressive, isn't it?
Yeah, deserve to win the constructors' title. I think the Red Bull probably has a better chassis, but the outright pace of that McLaren is just unreal. Yeah. So like at Brazil, it was 27 k's faster at the end of the straight than the McLaren. I don't know how it compared to the Red Bull, but I know they said that about the McLaren. And you think that is insane, isn't it?
With
how
the same
fast
engine.
That is.
Yeah.
You know, that's just crazy. So yeah, but he's conducting himself right well. Typical Lewis, really. You can't really fault him much. You know,
no,
he's carrying
hell
himself.
Of a competitor. Yeah.
You know, he's worked hard at it. He's more mature now. I felt like Mercedes in general played a lot more mental games this year, which I wasn't so impressed with. So I probably less impressed with Mercedes than Lewis, I would say.
Yes.
In attitude.
I mean, the thing with Valtteri had some good days.
Yeah.
But is he not getting the same car, or is Lewis that good?
Well, he came out and said, now you might think, well, he's going to say this, but he came out and said, at Brazil, I found out my car was not running the same stuff.
Yeah. So.
And I do wonder, because quite often Bottas seems to be the fastest in practice quite often, and then suddenly it seems to change, and you think
FP1 on a Friday morning, he's quite often quickest.
But then is that just because Lewis is working very hard with his engineer and getting around it?
You never know. We don't know that.
I think more will come out now that Bottas is leaving. But whether he'll say much, we'll have to wait and see.
Because with the Red Bull, as we said, I think the Red Bull's got the best chassis. Not necessarily the easiest to drive. I think Max was the fastest driver in the field, but a bit like with Schumacher with his teammates at Ferrari, you could tell how well the car was working by where Perez was.
Yes,
because if Perez was in the top four, the car's working
good,
fine.
yeah.
But you see, Max will be quickest and Perez is 10th. The car's a nightmare.
Absolutely.
And Max is carrying it.
And I think what's happened really with Red Bull is they've engineered the car completely to suit Max. So where it's their downfall with that is it doesn't seem to be any of the teammates to Max really gel with the car. And then the team get more and more pressured with the driver, and it hasn't worked. But the good thing with Perez is he's older, he's more mature, he's been around the block. So I'm hoping he can deal with that pressure. He has got stronger. I mean, in the last race, he absolutely did make a difference.
And he must have accepted he's not Max. He's not stupid, is he?
I guess so, but I don't know, because obviously I do think that team is so wrapped around Max that, you know, it's hard to ever really know at Red Bull how they compare, because I do not believe it's equal treatment at all, and I think that car's geared for Max very much. But no, I think Perez has done well for his first year. He's got, the main thing is he's got stronger and stronger and stronger, and he has helped in that title fight. There's been times it's not been his fault and he's been taken out a few times this year, which has been nothing to do with him, so he's been a bit unlucky as well, really. But I would expect next year Red Bull to be incredibly strong, because there's a budget cap, but with Adrian Newey being able to engineer a car to, you know, I think that's going to be an incredibly strong car next year.
That'll be interesting to see. So next year then, what are we hoping for?
Okay, so well, first of all, close racing, less aero.
Yeah, it's a big rule change, isn't there?
I don't want there to be, because they're reducing the aero, but I hope
they're going more ground effect, aren't they?
Yeah.
Getting rid of the barge boards and all that.
My only worry is then that the engineers will work out another way around it.
Yeah, possibly.
But I just hope that it means they don't get stuck in this dirty air zone where they can't do anything. Personally, I know they won't, but personally I'd love them to get rid of DRS. Just have the cars be able to follow, because it's not a true overtake when you have DRS and you just go steaming past the next car that doesn't have it. That's not a great overtake. You want to see them line it up and work it out and battle it out. So
yeah, you do.
I know that might not change, but that for me personally. But the biggest thing for me for next year, FIA being more consistent, more black and white rules, and less runoff.
Yeah, but also don't let the team managers badger the race director. That needs to stop.
Absolutely.
I don't think that should be a thing.
I don't think Michael Massey, he doesn't come across strong enough.
No.
You know, whether he is or not, he could be just being polite. I don't know.
Bomb to deal with that lot.
Like with all of that, the money involved, the pressure, you know, I just think it's such a difficult thing. But yeah, so for me next year, I hope that people like Haas have a better chance. I really hope that the racing is even closer throughout the field. That we haven't just got one team or two teams fighting it out, but all of them really, or most of them in the mix.
And the one rule I'd like to see changed is the red flag rule, because I think it's ridiculous that they red flag the race and everybody gets a reset. I don't think that's fair. So like Imola this year, when Hamilton was off the road when he was red flagged, and it was like, and he got to come putting fresh tyres on and get his lap back, and you think,
and then it happened with Red Bull, if you remember, with Max. He got a fresh set of tyres on, didn't he?
So but anyway,
yeah, I think for me, track limits does need to be looked at over winter. There's been so many issues with penalties, and you think, well, you know what? And I know there's safety, but for me, it isn't as safe having all this extra time up, because people do more crazy lunges and all sorts of stuff, and the speeds are even greater. So I think they can race around tracks like Monza, they can race around Monaco, Azerbaijan, Qatar, so they can certainly race around tracks without all of this extra tarmac, and that will get rid of so many of the issues and penalties that we're having. So I desperately hope they look at that and change that for next year. But yeah, excited for next year. It's going to be a bit of a weird off season now. So we've actually got somebody coming on from Red Bull, which we will announce later on. As I said, coming into the winter now, we're going to have a lot more specials and interviews and things. We just wanted to get this last race out the way, and so we'll chat to you guys then. Okay,
absolutely. Have a good Christmas if we don't see you before.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Merry Christmas, and thanks for watching and listening. Thanks, guys.
Bye.